Good evening to all. On behalf of Colonel Satish Tyagi, retired, the Chief Editor of Chanakya Forum, I welcome each one of you to this webinar. This is our second webinar which we are organizing under the Chanakya Forum. And today we have a very interesting topic, a very, rather I would say a hotly debated topic. And the topic is the optimization of the Ordnance Factory Board. Is it the need of the hour and what is the way forward? So to speak on this, we have a fantastic panel. I think once you see the panel, we couldn't have asked for better speakers for this topics simply because we have a representation from the armed forces, precisely the army. We have representation from the Indian Administrative Service. We also have, I'm sure Shri Hari Mohan, he will join us, who is from the Indian Ordnance Factory Service. So such a elite panel, it's very difficult to get together to speak on such an important topic. Today, what we will be doing is that we will go through this webinar firstly by analyzing what is the impact that the OFB has had on our operational efficiency. So has our operational efficiency been affected by the OFB? And what is the stark reality? And then we go on to analyze what are the major issues which necessitates for change in the structuring of the Ordnance Factory Board. Yeah, I can see Shri Hari Mohan also. Welcome, sir, to the webinar. And then we will also get the views of, rather, what are the concerns, what are the apprehensions of the OFB, people who have served in the OFB, what are their concerns, what are their apprehensions. So that perspective we will get. And finally, we will also be seeing what is the way forward. How will the reorganization of the OFB help in increasing the operational efficiency? How can it contribute towards the vision of our Atmanirbhar Bharat? And that is how we will end the discussion. And what I'll request is that after the speakers have given their initial views, we would request for question answer sessions to start. And in that, we will request you to please put the questions on the chat box. I will then take the questions and then direct the question to the individual speakers. So without wasting much of the time, the first part of this webinar, which is how the functioning of the OFB, has it affected the operational efficiency of the Indian Armed Forces? What is the reality? To speak on the subject, I invite Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Shaurya Chakra, Sena Medal, Vishisht Seva Medal. General Kulkarni was commissioned into 4 Kumar from the Officers Training Academy, Chennai. He is a decorated soldier, and in many parlance, he is also a legendary soldier because he is the hero of Siachen. He was the first commander to have been decorated with Shaurya Chakra for his operations in Siachen Glacier. He commanded a battalion, a brigade, and a division along the line of actual control. He also served as the Chief of Staff at Leh, and he was the Director General Infantry. So over to you for your initial views, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's fantastic to be called for, Denny. That's one thing. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Now, if that be so, now let's first look at it. What is it that as an infantryman or as an army personnel, what is it that we expected from the OFB? Not OFB, from the Ordnance Factories. And the Ordnance Factory Board created in 1979 as a representative, and they have their own setup, which is in Calcutta. Now, having said that, now let us see what is it that as a person in uniform, what would I want from the Ordnance Factories? First and foremost, a product which is reliable, a product which is delivered to me on time, a product which is state of the art, and a product which instills confidence and inspires confidence in the men that are going to be using it. Be it arms, be it ammunition, be it spares, be it even sending it for overhaul, and when the overhauling is done and getting back. So this is what is requirement. And of course, the Ordnance Factories have been created and set up exclusively for the armed forces. That today, 80% of all the armed forces requirements are met through the Ordnance Factory Board. They're perfectly fine. But otherwise, the Ordnance Factories are created for the armed forces, and therefore you could safely be saying Well, the fourth arm. If I take the Coast Guard as the fourth arm, the fifth arm. So it's an arm. It's a part of the setup that the armed forces have. So that's the very most important thing. Now, where have we gone wrong? What has a situation where I feel bad today is having been their consultant for some time and now having served in the army for so long, being a part of the Shekatkar committee with General Bhatia was there. And so we know exactly what. And at the end of it, in the last about 2-3 days, you hear so much of aspersions in caste, each one defending his this thing, and that's something which is definitely uncalled for, because something which I would, as a man in uniform, feel extremely bad. If a user, after all, a user, for whatever the reason it is, he says if something is bad, and the other person says, no, it is not bad, that means there is a trust deficit. That's the first thing that we really need to look into, and what must concern us. There's a trust deficit. To say that everything is bad is absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Let me tell you, I've been associated with it, and I can tell you with certainty, it is to say all that is being done is not right. It is not so. So first and foremost, we must understand that these factories are for us, the armed forces. That's the first thing. Second, that all these ordnance factories set up have there to create and everything for the armed forces. Then where is it that we've actually gone wrong? Why haven't we been able to inspire the confidence that we're supposed to be doing? Now, when you look at it, some of the reports, they'll say, well, we say that we supply to the user almost 96 to 99% of what he has. The reports will say just 49%. They'll say, well, the inventory control, about 32 to 33% are overheads. Then they'll say that 32, almost 50% of the inventory gets unused. Then somebody will say, no, 30% of the costs are overrun. So there's so many factors, so many reports. It sometimes is mind-boggling. I would now recommend that if that be so, if the ordnance factories have been created for the user and the user doesn't feel inspired by these ordnance factories, then there is something. That means there is a requirement of oxygen to be given in, and the government has decided that we have to corporatize it. Now, the corporatization has been decided upon for a long time. We've had the Kelkar committee, we've had the Ramanpuri committee, we've had the Shekatkar committees, and so many committees which have come and gone to say that corporatization is one of the ways forward. It is not privatization. It does not take away the jobs of anybody. And now you find that someone decides to go on strike for whatever the reason it is. The unions decide to go on the strike on the 12th for corporatization. The corporatization has not inspired confidence in the ordnance factory workers, and the ordnance factories have not been able to inspire it that way, and the manufacturer doesn't want it that way. So there's something amiss in the entire thing. Before I say a few words for the entire thing, because there are other people also there, certain things which we need to do. Archaic methods. There are absolute archaic methods. There are manufacturing, wherein a lot of modernization, money gets pumped in for modernization. There are roll-on plans. Everybody is being overloaded with ammunition. They all have 5 years of orders already placed with them. So there is no problem. Most of the time, the orders aren't enough. The user delays placing orders for a long time. Sometimes it may be happening, but not usually. And ordnance factories which are created, where I think not even 13,000 crores is what actually is the output of 80,000 employees. The utilization is much less. It would be much more with the kind of thing. These are ordnance factories. The word factory itself means what? They manufacture, but probably a lot of it goes outsourcing because of supporting the MSME industry, small vendors, government letters which say that please support so and so, please support so and so. So there are a whole lot of these things that are coming up. So these are some of the things that we really need to look into. Finally, I'll just say a few things that do not. First is that the product which is being supplied is the troops. Again, when I say the troops aren't happy. Now, let's take the small case of this ammunition, which seems to be in the public domain, that the army seems to be saying that a lot of these casualties have taken place because of the ammunition supplied is not right. The ordnance factories seem to say, no, the ammunition that we've supplied, only about 19% of the casualties can be attributed to us. The balance of it is not our responsibility. It could be the fault of the weapons. it could be the design of the ammunition, it could be any other means, even of designs at the last minute by the user or by anybody else, but not the ordnance factory. Therefore, 19% alone, they're willing to accept that, yes, casualties have occurred, but our responsibility is 19% and not what the armed forces have to say. The imports, they will say there's this thing, only 2% of the entire thing is attributed to us. The balance of it is not attributed to them. The user doesn't care who it is attributed to and what it is. He feels that, well, the ammunition has come to us. And then again, the reports came in the public to say that, well, the kind of unused ammunition was about 1,000 crores. We could have bought about 100 RT guns. Well, they counted it to say that, look, around Kargil, so much of ammunition was gotten. The whole thing is still lying. It came much later after the ops are over. Another 550 guns, we could have bought it from the 400 crores. So these aspersions and, blaming one another, trust deficit. This is nothing but trust deficit. And that trust deficit comes from products not being up mark and expectation of the user. And that is why the corporatization, I look at it, is one of the, rather, as of today, the only way forward, because it's a strategic asset. The government should have full control over it. There is no denying the fact. The Secretary of Defense Production is the person who's responsible. You have Mr. Subhash Chandra sitting with us amongst us. They're all absolutely responsible. Their entire mind and focus is to ensure that the armed forces, the imports are the least. Manufacturing by us is max, so that you save money. But to get bang for the buck, it is essential for the ordnance factories to live up to the expectations of the user, which today seems a suspect. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that insights. In fact, what we could make out was clearly that there is a trust deficiency which stands out, is what was quite apparent from your talk. So now we move on to the next segment, which is that what are the major issues which necessitates a call for change in the structuring of the OFB. And as I mentioned earlier, we couldn't have asked for a better speaker, I think, in India today. On this subject, Shri Subhash Chandra will be speaking to us. He belongs to the 1986 batch of the Indian Administrative Service. He retired as the Secretary, Department of Defense Production very recently. He has nearly about 7.5 years of experience in the Ministry of Defense, in the Departments of Defense and Defense Production at the level of Joint Secretary, Additional Secretary, and of course, the Secretary. So I don't think, as I mentioned again, he is the ultimate authority on this issue. So over to you.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to share my thoughts on this subject. I have always believed that the Ministry of Defense is not a business as usual ministry, and one needs to look at issues in a far greater and deeper analysis. And therefore, I would like to begin by saying that if, in spite of 4 such committees who have directly or indirectly recommended the corporatization of the Ordnance Factory Board, I think it is an idea whose time has come, and we could not have asked for it at a better time, because we have at this point of time a dispensation that is willing to take that call. Having said that, we must understand the context in which the issue has to be examined. Defense production, apart from being of great strategic importance, is of great relevance to the overall economic framework of the country as we move towards the Prime Minister's objective of having a 5 trillion economy, of raising exports by 2025 to something like $25 billion, and so on and so forth. So we must place this objective in the larger context of where the Indian economy, the Indian manufacturing sector, of which the defense manufacturing sector, not only as a strategic sector, but as a very significant part, has to fit in. Secondly, we must also look at the context in which the Department of Defense Production itself has moved this forward. In August 2019, a cabinet note was prepared and was submitted to the cabinet, It has been announced as part of a revival package, but I think things have moved very fast. A consultant has also been appointed. As I understand, it is KPMG who has been appointed as a consultant to oversee, to suggest, and then significantly to oversee the transition. Having said that, let me spend uh, a short time on what General Kulkarni has very rightly said about the trust deficit. A trust deficit certainly is not desirable. I don't think the defense of India can be subject to such petulance and bad blood between organizations in the public domain. But where is it coming from? This is an issue that we need to ask ourselves. And this is coming from, I think, years of uh, uh, accusatory statements where we have looked at uh, we've looked at time overruns, we've looked at cost overruns, we've looked at quality and overall sort of huge inventories which have been held, huge overheads which may also be correct. But is corporatization alone the kind of panacea that one can think of? Because we must not forget that there are other DPSUs under the same Department of Defense Production, which are currently undergoing a disinvestment process, which have over the years also been exposed to charges of time delays, of cost overruns, of inadequate quality, etc., etc. Having said that, we must also flag the other issue, which is that ordnance factory boards have been part of the Indian defense uh, ecosystem for a long time. They have been part of the surge production that has been asked of them without resorting to surge prices. And they have also been significantly associated in the annals of the Indian Army. Therefore, I would like to go a little forward and say that there should be an acceptance of the concept of optimization. I think you have chosen this word very correctly. Corporatization with its hint of privatization, or rationalization with the hint of either downsizing or right sizing, call it what you will. Optimization, in fact, comes up to my mind as a more sort of rational and optimistic note, primarily because it doesn't attempt to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think that is something that we must not lose sight of, because when we look at optimizing, we are looking at optimizing the strengths, minimizing the shortfalls or the shortcomings, and looking forward to a buy-in from all stakeholders, which can lead to a win-win situation. And therefore, in the overall context, as I said, over the last 3-4 years, there has been a tremendous focus on defense manufacturing. Not only the 2 defense corridors which have been announced, but the other initiatives of innovations, of indigenization, opening up of test facilities, having a scheme to offer a PPP model for the testing facility in the corridors. All of these lead to a much more mature understanding of the issues that confront us in the defense production sector. The growth of the defense industry, and when I say industry, the 150 or 170 companies which are outside the domain of the DPSUs and the ordnance factory have also played a very major role, and we must understand that we have to look forward to an era now where we can try and even work through joint ventures or some sort of a collaborative approach. Now, collaboration is something that the ordnance factory boards are really not new to. If you look at the Shaktiman trucks, it was a collaboration between the ordnance factory board and the MAN company of Germany, or the Jonga jeeps, which was with the Nissan company of Japan. There are models which we have to choose. The models have to be such that they have to incorporate some of the lessons which have been identified or will be identified, I hope, by the KPMG. Two examples come sort of readily to mind. One is the British Aerospace, which was actually part of the Royal Ordnance Board of the US or of the UK, which was made into a private limited company, and then through mergers and acquisitions became the BAE Systems. Secondly, if you look at an example out of India itself, the Oil and Natural Gas Commission, which was set up in 1956, was corporatized in 1994 as a corporate entity, and has now been able to leverage the liberalization that followed in the sector. So I think what is important to my mind is to look at the issue from the perspective of having a dialogue, getting the the kind of buy-in that is required, and I'm sure we will hear more about it from Mr. Hari Mohan, because I remember he had started this dialogue while he was soon after he took over as the chairman OFB, and he has held a series of meetings to familiarize and to allay the apprehensions that have been there. But having said that, I would like to end on another note, which is something that we have in the ministry been confronting for a long time, which is anytime there is an AON which is accorded, you have a large number of vendors who keep coming in and making all kinds of allegations, counter allegations, because for them it is the purchase which is a better option. Even where organizations like the DPSUs are concerned, or even the OFB is concerned, where there is a transfer of technology involved, even in that there will be a lot of nefarious ways that will be used. All kinds of letter writing, all kinds of insinuations would be made. This is something that is there in the environment, and this is something that we need to be very wary of, because any model that we try and suggest should be in a very transparent way, which will not lead to such kind of issues which will come forward to cloud the proposals that come forward as the roadmap as we move ahead. So I'll stop here, and maybe if there are any issues that we need to take up later, I'll be happy to step in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was really fascinating inputs which you have given, sir. I mean, the fact that we have to look at the bigger picture as far as the economy is concerned, and of course the term optimization, which we had given a thought, and that's how we put it there, sir. And definitely the last part also regarding the transparency is also absolutely important. Now we move on to the next segment, which now we are lucky to have the OFB perspective, and from somebody who I think we, again, like I said before, we cannot have a better speaker than Shri Hari Mohan to speak us on what are the concerns, what are the apprehensions of for those who are asking for a review of OFB. What are the apprehensions to speak on that aspect? Now, a word about Shri Hari Mohan. He was a member of the Indian Ordnance Factory Service, and he was also the ex-chairman of the Ordnance Factory Board. Shri Hari Mohan is a person with brilliant academic excellence. He was the topper in his BTech and MTech degree exams at NIT Ahmedabad and University of Pune, and a person with enriched professional experience in the field of corporate governance in steel sector, manufacture of heavy, medium, and small caliber ammunitions and armored fighting vehicles. He was the CEO of the ammunition making unit at Pune and the main battle tank manufacturing unit at Chennai. For his professional achievements, he was conferred the highest award of the department, that is the Ayudh Ratna for the year 2017-18. He is just superannuated, that is on 31st of August 2020. Over to you, Shri Harimon. And I also know that he's the only voice from OFB. So after the last speaker, I will again come back to him and hand over him for another 2 to 3 minutes more so that he can have adequate time to express himself. Over to you, sir.
Very good afternoon, and I hope you can. I'm audible.
Absolutely, sir. You can. You are audible.
Yeah. First of all, I am very extremely fortunate that such a esteemed panelists are here. Our ex-Secretary DP is here. Our ex-DG-RT is here. Our ex-DG-MO is here. And I consider myself very fortunate to join at this forum and speak on this very important subject which is being faced by the country as of now. First of all, I would like to dwell upon a bit that, when this corporatization is being talked about, restructuring is being talked about, while there is a changing time, there is changing business scenario, but then whatever all ordnance factories have been contributing so far, they have been always standing with the armed forces, that nothing can be undermined. Unnecessary, certain, selective data is being shared. See, recently a report has been shared at 403 accidents. Immediately on the factual basis, Ordnance Factory Board has come out with a statement that out of, in the last 5 years, whatever accidents have been investigated, only 19% are involving the ammunition supplied by Ordnance Factory. 81% is something else. And you see, the ammunition supplied by Ordnance Factories is more than 80% of the ammunition given to army is buy from Ordnance Factories. So 80% is our supply and 19% is only on our involvement. From this, you can draw the conclusion, the amount of, how do we compare with the ammunition supplied by others? Similarly, a lot of casualties have been reported. See, out of 27 casualties, whatever is being talked about, out of that 19 casualties has happened when there was no use of ammunition. It was an accident due to some other reason. I cannot go into detail, but the ammunition was not on use at that point of time. And if you look at again at data, Ordnance Factory Board has very clearly come out that it is only 2% casualties where the OFB ammunition is attributable to. This is one part of the accidents. Now, second part, I come to the fulfillment of targets. There is a parliamentary committee report for 5 years. That is, up to the year 18-19, that the fulfillment of targets to army by OFB were in the range of 94% to 98%. Due to stringent quality controls, due to limited supply lines, sometimes it is not feasible to complete the production within the same year and it spills over to the next year because there cannot be any compromise on the quality. And that is the reason for non-fulfillment, but not because of any failure or non-commitment on the part of employees of Ordnance Factories. The third dimension, the quality is being talked about. See, we are talking of the quality. Now, I would say that the ammunition is being exported by the Ordnance Factories. There are repeat orders for the ammunition. The barrels are being exported by the Ordnance Factories. Bofors is buying artillery barrels from us and using for their own R&D. And if these are the Dhanush weapon, it is our own in-house design. And Ordnance Factories has come out with the Dhanush design. And I would give the credit of Dhanush success is to entire MOD. And I'm telling you that is an excellent example of synergy in all the stakeholders. I do not give the credit of Dhanush success only to Ordnance Factory. Ordnance Factories may be the nodal, Ordnance Factories may be the designers and manufacturers, but it was the involvement of all the stakeholders, the DRDO, the Indian Army, DGRT. There was a full-fledged team positioned at Gun and Carriage Factory, Jabalpur, by Indian Army. And in my opinion, Dhanush model is one of the excellent, latest, successful model, and we should learn lessons from it, and we should work something similar to that. Within 7 to 8 years, you have realized a state-of-art artillery gun. And that is the experiment which we should to do. And what I look at is that there has to be much more synergy between all the stakeholders, and ordnance factories are always committed to armed forces. Armed forces are committed to the country. We are committed to the country, and we at ordnance factories are more committed to the armed forces. Coming to the structure of the organization, we are a 200-year-old organization. We have done the production with bullocks. We have done the production with steam engines. We have done the production with electricity. And now we are doing the production with automatic machines. We are doing production with NC machines. We are doing with the CNC machines. We are using robotics. And now the latest thing is Industry 4. Means all the plant and machinery has to be digitally controlled. You should be able to predict a machine when the machine is going to fail. And that is what is the concept of Industry 4. And I have taken Raksha Mantri to Ordnance Factory Ambajari, and I have shown him for almost 3 hours the entire factory and how the robotics is being used, how the Industry 4 is being used. Industry 4, what a private sector company is willing to offer a solution for say 10 to 15 lakh rupees. By internal talent, we are able to realize that solution within 1 or 2 lakh rupees. We have more than 100 projects on Industry 4. So anybody is trying to say that we are following a legacy of Britishers? No. At that time when the Britishers were left, there were only 15 to 16 factories. Today we have 41 production units. And every year there is an updation, every year there is a modernization, every year we are investing more than 500 to 600 crores only on modernization. If you can find the latest machine in the country, you will find in ordnance factories. If you find a large population of CNC machines, you will find in ordnance factories. The explosive portion, earlier it was only many operations were manual. We have gone for screw filling machines, and we have gone for automation. Pinaka assembly is automatic. 84 ammunition is automatic. Your 5.56 ammunition, the entire loading is automatic. The complete bullet making is automatic. The complete packing is automatic. So, see, only problem with the ordnance factories, that ordnance factories have always been slightly inward looking. They have never shared with the public domain what all they are doing. If many of our, army officers, since they do not visit ordnance factories during their career, they make certain perceptions based on the information available in the newspapers and the things being talked about on a selective basis. And that is why sometimes our army officers also start feeling that or ordnance factories are having archaic methods. Let me give you an example. On 12th of October 2019, DGRT in Maniksa Center walked onto our stall, and he gave a challenge to our team. Can you develop a sniper rifle with 8.6 mm? Within 35 days, our rifle factory Ichhapur has come out with a prototype and demonstrated in school of our army school in Mau. And see, that is the kind of capability which is available in ordnance factories. What I am saying, it is a national treasure. It is a national asset. And this has to be handled. If we want to do any change, a forward-looking change is welcome. A change which can make improvements is welcome. The change which can provide growth, that change is welcome. The change which instills confidence among 80,000 people, that is welcome. See, the other stakeholders may not be aware that what will be the outcome of the change. The ordnance factories can assess it better that what kind of change is in the interest of ordnance factories. See, ordnance factories employees, they are government employees. Their service security is a very limited stake, because as I understand the rules and as I understand the current politics, none of the employee can be thrown out. And if you do not utilize their capability, they will become liability. You will have to pay. Government will have to pay, and government is ready to pay, and government is committing to pay. What I am saying, this skill which has been developed, the capability which has been developed, while the plant and machinery you can replicate, plant and machinery you can buy, plant and machinery you can create, but the kind of skill which has been generated among the technocrats, among the engineers, among the technicians, you cannot develop overnight. And that is what my submission to the entire fraternity of the country is, that please handle this with care. And I'm sure the current government, which has a very, very popular mandate, and the empowered group of ministers which have been constituted, I'm sure they will look at things in a very responsible manner, and they will come out with a solution which is in the interest of country, which is in the interest of ordnance factories, and which will ensure growth of ordnance factories. And this is what I would like to say. It is very easy to criticize. I question those who are criticizing. Let them give one suggestion, and we are welcome to implement that suggestion. It is very easy to say that you are bad. You tell me how I can become good. Those people who are criticizing, they do not have any knowledge of manufacturing. They do not have any knowledge of company running. They do not have any knowledge of defense hardware manufacturing. They do not have any knowledge of defense designing. No designer has criticized ordnance factories. No manufacturer has criticized ordnance factories. No manufacturer will ever criticize ordnance factories. And the one who knows ordnance factories, he will also not criticize. I would request all those who are criticizing ordnance factories, let them visit at least 10 ordnance factories and see the capability. We have thousands of appreciation letters from Army. See, when the Army gets stuck with any problem, I'll tell you, in the Rajasthan sector, one T-90 tank was lying for 6 months because there was an ammunition cell stuck inside. Nobody could remove, neither any Army expert could remove, nor DGQR expert could remove. They requested to me when I was GMHPL, sir, please send your experts. This tank is stuck for more than 6 months. We want to remove the shell. And so the moment this problem came to my knowledge, immediately I deputed my competent team, and within 1 week, that cell, live shell stuck in the tank, could be taken out. Like that, there are many examples. There are many examples. And I'm telling you, any country, any army, any armed forces, the ordnance factories are almost like a kitchen of armed forces. See, when you may have an excellent dhaba outside, you may have an excellent 5-star hotel outside, you may get a tandoori roti at 5 rupees in the dhaba outside, and if you try to price the roti what you are getting in your house, it may cost more than 5 rupees, but you will not close your kitchen. Night 2 o'clock, when you need food, no dhaba will serve you, but your kitchen will serve you. So what I am saying, if there are any deficiencies, if there are any lacunas, if there is any area where we want to, where there is need for improvement, the ordnance factory organization is always willing to listen. See, the accidents, when we talk of accidents, every accident, MOD has a very elaborate system. And every accident is investigated from all aspects. If there is a fault in ammunition, that is pointed out. If there is a fault in the weapon, that is pointed out. If it is an outlived ammunition, that is pointed out. If there was some mistake, see, you understand, in the peacetime, all our army jawans, they are required training, and they do the firing and training. They may be taking all the care, they may be given all the briefing. Still, there can be some mistakes. So, just because if a Maruti car meets with an accident on the road, you cannot say the Maruti car is bad. You have to see how was the road condition, how was the driver trained, and how was the traffic. So this is one example. I am not saying that ordnance factories are perfect. In my opinion, in our country, no organization is perfect. Tell me one manufacturing organization, we are inferior than that. You take 10 top leading manufacturing organizations of the country in the public sector, and please do the ranking on any objective criteria, we will come in top 5. We will come out of top 10 in the country, we will come in the top 5. So what I am saying, any problem, please analyze scientifically, please analyze logically, please analyze systematically, and diagnose the problem and go for a solution. I am sure the current government, the way they are taking decisions, the way the country is looking forward, the way things are moving forward. I am sure the empowered group of ministers, they will look at these things much more holistically, and they will come out with the solution which will be in the interest of the country, which will be in the interest of armed forces, and which will be in the interest of this national strategic asset. With this, I would conclude my talk, and if there is any other point coming forward, I would be very happy to respond if I am given a chance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Hariman. That was quite a passionate, expression, and of course, there is no doubt that I think everybody agrees that there is no issue of recognizing the skills and all. But as far as criticism is concerned, I'm sure, as you rightly mentioned, everybody, any organization in India or be it anywhere, should be open to criticism. I don't think that as you rightly agreed. Now we move on. Sir, you had spoken for almost 15 minutes. So I had given you extra 5 minutes already. So we move on to the next thing. That is, now we speak on what is the way forward. And how will the reorganization of the OFB help in increasing the operational efficiency and contribute towards the vision of our Atmanirbhar Bharat? And to speak on this, we have with us Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Sena Medal. He is the director for the Center for Joint Warfare Studies. He, after his distinguished service in the army for 40 years, and in which he was also the Director General of Military Operations and also the Director General of Infantry. He was commissioned into the Parachute Regiment, and he commanded an infantry division on the line of control and operational corps along the Indo-China border. He has written extensively on regional and national security, international relations, special operations. He is a member of the Track to Ottawa Dialogue. He was also the co-chair of the India-US Executive Steering Group on Defense Cooperation, and also he was a member of the Shakatkar Committee as well. So over to you for your views.
Thank you, Colonel. Jai Hind, everybody. Firstly, my thanks to Colonel Tyagi, an old friend and a colleague, the convener and founder of the Chanakya Forum. It's an excellent forum which has come out. Must compliment you. The issue was high quality. Thank you very much indeed. It is for me to now speak up for the Caesar's wife. We have three old colleagues out here. We have General Kulkarni, an old friend, and a DG Infantry. Mr. Subhash Chandra, he was a GSG when I was a DGM, and Mr. Hariman, and we worked together to ensure the capability development and capacity enhancement of the armed forces till very recently. Thank you very much. I don't think that the present corporation of the ordnance factories is because the ordnance factories are not functioning well. They're not doing their job right. They are an effective tool. There's no doubt about it. But what I'm trying to say is something a little different. We are looking, the Indian Armed Forces, let me put it bluntly, and everyone is very proud of the organization, all of us, is one of the most combat-rich, battle-hardened, committed, disciplined, professional armed forces in the world. We are the second largest army, the largest voluntary army in the world, the fourth largest air force, and the blue water navy. We have proven ourselves in almost all situations, be it internal security, HADR, or along the border management. But today we continue to be a military force. We are not a military power as a nation. We are looking ahead, and India in a rightful place in the community of nations, especially in the emerging world order post-COVID. We are a global leader. We have to assert ourselves. And for that, it is important and essential to become a military power and not even a military force. I think that is something which we need to factor in. And how to become a military, and why are you not a military power? That we have to see. 67% of our weapons platform, arms and equipment are ex-imports. We are dependent on Israel, on Russia, on French, the Americans, even UAE for that matter. And it is up to the Indian soldiers, sailor, air warriors that we get equipment from all over, and then we optimize it, we exploit it. It is not easy. It's not easy. So what we need to do is we have to now transition from being a military force to being a military power, and for that we need a defense industrial base. our defense industrial base is basically of 9 DPSUs and the 41 ordnance factories, which I don't think is sufficient. There's little competition. If you were to ask me, and let me also assure you that Dhanush was being killed in 2013. General Mukherjee will bear me out. I fought against all odds. I said, let the Dhanush carry on. They said that is not good. I said, let it fail. Failure is not bad. Failures are good. From failures we achieve success. But the fact remains that today we have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to bring a defense and industrial base. We have to contribute to Atmanirbhar vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. It's a national initiative. It's a national drive. So we have to progress from there. We have to become a net importer of arms in the next decade to decade and a half. So that we saw, what do we do? And we also must thank China. I must thank China for what it has done. It has given us time. And what China has done, and both COVID and LAC, what it has done, it has told us that we have set on a northern border, something which everyone has been doing. And Mr. Subhashan agreed out there. We worked on the Mountain Strike Corps and the aggression forces. We met so often on that, and that is something which we got through finally in the July of 2013. But the fact remains, because of these two things, and what the COVID has done as the resource crunch, the armed forces will be asked to do more and more and less and less. So that is the two things which we need to factor in. One, transition from a military force, or transform from military force to military power. And secondly, be prepared to do more and more and less and less. So how do we do that? That is the challenge. If you ask me, the ordnance factories are serving their purpose. It's not that they're not serving their purpose. But do we have a different industrial base? No. We do not have a different industrial base. There's no competition. Are we optimal? I don't know. Quality, yes, there are issues of quality. Let's face facts. If we don't face facts, we'll never improve. There are issues of quality. There is issue of trust, as you mentioned, but it is not only owed to certain mindsets and all. There are issues. Let me be very frank about it. Whether it's the critical equipment or even non-critical equipment. 80% of our arms and ammunition and weapons platform military hardware is low to medium technology. So what are we looking at? Since 2000 onwards, various committees have spoken and recommended corporatization of the ordnance factory. So ordnance factory. So there must be something in it, because it's been going on 20 years. And out of the 167 transformative ideas which this government had set to implement in 100 days in August of 2019, in 100 days, that was October 2019, some of them implemented, not all of them implemented, but ordnance factory, corporate ordnance factory is one of them. It has not happened because there is resistance from within. So I think we should give it a chance and improve. And I'm also telling you that there'll be problems, there'll be hurdles. It's not going to be a smooth transition. We'll have to prepare for that, and that is where the challenge lies. Because the armed forces and the ordnance factories, which are part of it, the fifth vertical, I would say, we have to be not only future ready, but be present relevant. I cannot say tomorrow that, look, I haven't got A, B, C, D, and so I cannot perform my job of on the line of control or the internal security or line of actual control. No, I cannot. I have to be present relevant. I have to be future ready. So how does transition work out? That remains the challenge, and that is where I think what comes into being is the KP, the study which is going to go on. And we did try to recommend some issues like this, including the transition management in the Shikitकर committee. So that had been taken on well by the then Raksha Mantri, Mr. Parikar. However, it has again been revived, present now, and let's see what is the final shape it takes. So is corporatization the only way forward? I really don't know, but I think there is one good way forward where we need to align accountability and authority. I feel, and I have been the DG of the Indian Army and the DG Infantry also, somewhere the authority and the accountability is not aligned. Or that is the feeling among the services, because services are captive. And when you are captive, there is there's a lack of a competition. So the improvement comes through competition. There's a monopoly, there's a captive, and we get what we get, and that is where I think the problem lies. We need corporatization. We need to be this thing, and the ordnance factories have got vast asset in terms of resources, manpower resources, experience, management, the infrastructure, the latest machinery. So we'll have to contribute not only to the armed forces, but let's also now start looking at contributing for dual use, even for civil use. Even the Ishapur factory, when they make the pistols are, there's a waiting list to acquire the pistols even by the service personnel when they're retiring. It's about 75,000-80,000 rupees. So that is always there. Though there are issues of costing, there are issues of time overruns, there are issues of cost overruns, there are issues of quality. But that is not the reason why we should be corporatizing the OFB. That can be improved internally, and it can be improved. There's no doubt about it. But what we should look at the bigger picture, we should look at tomorrow, and we have to understand that we need defense industrial base because we need surge capacities. We know the amount of resource required for the war wastage reserves, which we have to have maintained, which is a very vast resource. To indent it, to store it, store such a large inventory, it needs infrastructure, it needs cost. So if we have a defense industrial base and we have such capacities, I think we can reduce our costs by about 50% in a reserve alone, because reserve capacities are really required. Can you give me a tinkle after 8 minutes, Kalini? Thank you. So we are looking at, I'll give you a small example. I'm not a China man. I study China though. I'm a China fan. Irrespective of what they've done on the LEC, if you look at the way Chinese have come up, in the year 2000, I was in the infantry directorate, the RSF. We had gone to Eurosector in Paris. We also had reps from the ordnance factories and the DRDO. Chinese had the largest delegation there because at that point of time, they were the largest importer of arms and military hardware. We are the second largest. 2000 to 2020, 20 years today, China is the net exporter of 6% of the worldwide arms. We have continued to be the world's, we have become second largest now, just by a little bit, but with 13% of the world's imports are by India. So we are everyone's darling, whether it's the US, whether it's the French, whether it's Israel. They are friends because they want to sell us equipment. They want to sell the military hardware, government to government. So we'll have to look at why 20 years now. Had we started something about 20 years ago, we would have been self-reliant, Atmanirbhar as the word goes today, in a few things, not in everything, but in a few things. Today, let's take the last 4 or 5 years. We have gone for emergent procurements in 2016 after the surgical strike. We've gone for emergent procurements when Dolam happened. It's not Doklam, it's Dolam. When Dolam incursions took place, we went for emergent procurements with the precision air strikes and Jabba Top. We have gone for massive emergent procurements again. So had we had our systems in place, we could have possibly done better and optimized our monies, our resources. We know what the defense budget is all about, and if we do not optimize it, it is impacting our military capabilities. It is impacting our capacity enhancement. It is impacting capability development. 1 more minute, okay. I think I have. So what we should be looking at is I have a long list of things to say, but I will abide by the time. It will be good for the ordnance factories also because it'll get incentivized. We have the resource, we have the manpower, and once they become competitive, they will have more incentive, they'll have more pride. Once it's a good business model, the money will get back into the ordnance factories and the nation, and it'll be a win-win situation all over. It's not going to be easy. There will be resistance, and resistance is but normal. There's no doubt about it. Everyone, and I'm very happy, Mr. Harimon. I like the pride in what you have. I salute you for that and your contributions. But the fact remains, we will have to now cooperate and how best to do it. And let's see how we can facilitate the nation, the need of the armed forces, the need of the ordnance factories, and let it be a win-win situation. I'll end out there and wait for the question also. Thank you very much, Jai.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I think you put it brilliantly that we have to move from a military force to a military power. I think that sums up the entire thing. Shri Harimon, do you want to add another 2 minutes, or we have a lot of questions?
I just give me only 2 minutes. That is enough.
Fine. Please go ahead.
First of all, I would only like to give a brief response. First of all, if we are importing 67%, kindly let the entire forum must be aware. Let me just state, it is mainly in the aviation. It is for the Air Force and Navy, and 67% is not for the Indian Army. Second thing, whatever products we are making, 90% are indigenous, and ammunition we are 97% indigenous. And so long as industry cooperation are there, more than 4,000 companies, they work with us, and we more than 40% of our turnover we take from our Indian industry. And so far as competitiveness is concerned, let me share with you the T90 tank we are giving you at the 85% cost, less than 85% cost of the international price. 84mm rocket launcher we are giving you less than 75% of the price. The BMCS propellant for 155 ammunition, which is the latest development, we are giving at less than 67% of the international price. T90 engines, T72 engines, it is less than 60% of the international price. AK-630 gun, we are giving you less than 50% of the price. See, please do not compare the cost of the socks and mosquito nets and jackets. That has been done in a forum, that the jacket supplied by by Ordnance Factory is 3,000 rupees, and what you get in market in 1,500 rupees. What is manufactured in the market, how much he is paying to his laborer, how much they are paying to their workmen. If I need a driver in Ordnance Factories, I have to pay 40 to 50,000 rupees to a driver. And if you go to the market in 40,000 rupees, you can get a Honda City car 24 hours sitting at your doorstep. In the current setup, I am governed by certain government rules. I have to pay as per the government rules. I cannot underpay. So these are certain limitations, but still, but we do not have any motive of earning a profit. And since we do not earn any profit, and we are buying our inputs at a very most competitive price, that is why we are able to control the price. So again, it is a selective quoting. Few small things are being quoted. Whatever ordnance factories are issuing in a year, if you entire basket is priced, we would be at least 15 to 20% cheaper than the market. Whatever ordnance factories are giving to Indian Army, if the Indian Army whole thing buys from the market, it will have to spend 15 to 20% more. Please, see, this is again a selective comparison. ये जैकेट सस्ता है, ये यूनिफॉर्म सस्ती है, ये टोपी सस्ती है, ये ECC क्लोथिंग सस्ता है, ऐसे नहीं. There may be, see, that is what I would like to mention. But then ordnance factories are a forward-looking organization. We are welcoming for any change which is good for the country and good for the ordnance factories and good for growth of this important national asset. Thank you.
Fine, sir. Right, sir. So we will go to the question answer session, sir. The first question is from Wing Commander A. Krupakaran. He says, and this is again, I think to Sri Harimohan will be the best person to answer this. At a macro level, what is the percentage contribution of ordnance factories to India's GDP by way of export income? Similarly, what's the import component value of the ordnance factories? Are we using 100% of installed capacity of the factories? He's got some more, but I think you can you answer this?
I will answer this question. As very clearly brought out during the discussion, there are surge capacities held in the ordnance factories. And this is the point I wanted to address in my talk, but now I will address. See, if the capacities are being maintained, it is in the interest of the country, it is the interest of Indian Army that you overload those capacities. See, military equipments, military hardware, they are stringent quality controls, and at times there may be a bottleneck of input that we are not getting a quality input, and there will be a stoppage of production. And when the production stops, one production line stops, you should be able to deploy your resources or end the production line. So it is in the interest of country that ordnance factories should be overloaded. If their capacity is 100, give them the workload of 120. They may discharge 99, but then you will get a cost advantage. No capacity will get underutilized, and no capacity, no resource will be wasted. The contribution in export, we were not expected to export. We were expected to meet the requirement of our domestic forces. Recently, government has given a mandate that we should get into the field of exports. We have been around 3 years back, 4 years back, we were exporting only limited to the extent of 15 to 20 crores. And we have now, from 15 to 20 crores, we have reached to the level of 300 crores. And we have a vision to reach to a level of 1,000 crores. And we will be interested. There are inquiries for Dhanush gun. Now, Dhanush gun, I will first meet my army's requirement. Then I'll think of export. There are many things which first I'll meet our domestic requirement. Then we will think of export. I do not have a ready figure how much the percentage of DG, it will be minuscule. It will be minuscule. But then the mandate given to us, we are working as per that mandate. Now the mandate has been given by government to go for export, and we have embarked upon it. We have reached to 300 crores, and we are targeting 1,000 crores in the near future.
Okay. Thank you, Shri Harimon. The next question is to Shri Subhash Chandra. So could you throw some light on the optimization stroke, corporatization of OFB? What exactly do you mean is one of the questions which they have sent me in private, that what exactly does it mean? How does it entail that this will transform? If you can, in a nutshell, explain that, because most of the people think that it is, doing away with the employees. What exactly do you mean by this optimization, sir?
See, one of the issues is that the status of the Ordnance Factory Board as a department of the government makes it also bound, as Mr. Harimohan has been emphasizing through his various examples. It makes it bound to a lot of procedural issues. For instance, if he is going to earn 300 crores from export earnings, that earnings will go into the Consolidated Fund of India. It doesn't get channelized into the amounts that he can use for other activities, for modernization, for upgradation, technology upgradation, etc. So basically, one has to move. When you say optimization, you have to look at a whole set of processes and procedures of the Ordnance Factory Board. So you have to move from a no profit, no loss system to a cost plus model. However, when you do that, you have to also look at the approach that is there in certain other countries where they put a cap on prices. They put so you move to a more a more modern, let me say, balance sheet based approach rather than just a no profit, no loss government, debit credit system. So these are some of the processes that will go into it. You have to look at other issues of also developing vendors for assemblies, sub-assemblies, components, involving the MSME sector who can work with you. It is not as if they are not working with them. They are already working with them, but you have to create an ecosystem which will work alongside. You have to look at issues of skilling and reskilling people under the Skill India program and other such schemes. When you have to move to Industry 4.0, then there are certain other requirements. So you have to see this as part of a ecosystem that needs to be upgraded. And so optimization really doesn't mean that you rationalize and you downsize and you remove people, etc. You have to optimize the strengths, you have to optimize the skills, you have to optimize through integration of more modern ways of working, through technology, through better managerial inputs. Ultimately, we have to look at what makes the defense of India a more robust issue. We have to move, as General Bhatia said, from a force to a power. So we must not lose sight of the larger national objective, and whatever it takes to optimize our own strengths. As I said, we have a lot of strengths. These strengths have to be built upon. And I think both General Kulkarni and General Bhatia have emphasized that there is a trust deficit rather than only a quality or other deficit. So I'm sure this means that there is a lot going for the ordnance factories. What needs to be, it's said that winners don't do different things; they have to do things differently. That's what it means to my mind.
Thank you, sir. So next question to General Kulkarni, sir. So can you throw some light on the 5.56 insights? Has it really affected the efficiency as far as the Kargil war and after that is concerned?
Dini, we have heard everyone, and there couldn't be better people to be able to tell us all. You really now notice that the manufacturer seems to feel that he has really done his best. There's nothing, and whatever little could be done, will be addressed within so. Whereas when we see the user, we find condemning and criticizing, not happy for whatever the reason it may be. It is very, let's take now what you just said, the 5.56 which is there. Now this INSAS rifle, when it got was DRDO came at him because replace 16-51 with a 5.5 a change. That was one. You were looking at NATO. The aim was to incapacitate and not to kill. The 7.52-51 was to kill and not incapacitating. Then we subsequently shifted to insurgencies, and we found most people reporting that this weapon is not killing. That is what we wanted. The military must die and not just get incapacitated. It is okay, different in a conventional war, unlike in an insurgency. So these were two things. But what happened finally? When the 7.62 into 51 was replaced with the 5.56 into 45 just around the Kargil war, it's one of the very fine weapons. There's no denying the fact. Very beautifully designed now. But who designed it? The DRDO designed it. And who started manufacturing it? The ordnance factories were manufacturing it. There was no hand-holding, as I see it. Absolutely no hand-holding of this particular weapon. Now, a designer has designed a particular weapon. He has to do the hand-holding along with the manufacturer. The user must get involved into it, 100% into it, to say that, well, these are the things that today, what has happened is that we now have again shifted back to a 7.62 to 51 as a basic caliber, and the subsequent caliber is the 7.60 to 39. So you find this kind of a thing has happened, as a result of which it is, believe you me, it is primarily the failure of INSAS which has resulted in quite a bit of the reputation of the ordnance factories having taken a beating. It is because, after all, this is a personal weapon of a soldier. And if that doesn't come up, now we had the Mark 1, we have the Mark 2, we have Mark 1 Alpha, then we have Mark 1 Bravo. We have so many things. But at the end of it, if the taste of pudding lies in eating, the user has to be satisfied with whatever we could be the best, but if in the eyes of the user, we are not good. We are not good. As simple as that. And let's take it as simple as that. Therefore, you find that this particular the root cause for the ordnance factories to have got an extremely bad name, because in the last 25 years, this weapon has not lived up to the expectations of the user for whatever the reason. Because any design changes take a long time, and by the time the ordnance factories the design change, the user has his own ways. The DGQA has its own means. The ARDE has its own. So all of them, that the user, the DRDO, the ARDE, and the DGQA, all of them have to be on the same platform. The interaction has to be really very, very close. You will never find a weapon failing, because these people are capable, as rightly everyone has been saying so. They have capital, they have skilled manpower, they have the modern machinery, they are very devoted and dedicated people working for it. But at the end of the day, the taste of the pudding lies in eating. And that is where 5.56 into 45 INSAS has not lived up to the expectations of the user at all, leading to the change of the weapon. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is to General Bhatia, sir. This is from R. Sundaram. he says, why is the army not able to start? I think what he must be meaning is to start quality problems by more actively engaging with OFB at different levels. So do we have a system in which we engage with the OFB at different level? I think that's what he wants to ask.
We do have systems, but the point is that getting back to the infrastructure is very dear to our heart. Small arms or a rifle is an appendage to my body. It is not something else. It's an appendage to my body. And if I do not have a trust in that weapon, I am at a disadvantage. I can show you. We had some contact information, so I told a column to move and get it done. A contact information is not so easy to come by, and when you're contacting, you run. So I after about half an hour, I said, what's happened? They said troops are still ready, they're not gone out. I said, why have they not gone out? Sir, वो AK-47 वापस आएंगे तो जाएंगे ना. इंसाफ लेके कौन जाएगा वहाँ? But that was the answer given to me by a company commander, and I salute him for that. He was frank enough. If that is an issue, I'm not saying that it is ordnance. I know who designed it. I know who does the QA. But the fact today is the soldier does not have the trust in the weapon. And which weapon? A rifle, which is an appendage to his body. I sleep with it. I sleep with that weapon. I move with that weapon. That is what I'm doing. But if I don't have a trust in that weapon, I'm carrying like a danda. So there are issues. Coming back to the question, yes, we have interactions, but it is not good enough. We need more interactions, and one of the things is that we need to cross-post officers to the ordnance factories, and they should be responsible for things. They should be accountable. That's why I said align accountability authority. I meant that, and they should be cadre control should not be with the ordnance factories like the DRDO. The cadre control should rest with the service headquarters, because the moment the cadre control rests with the organization, not the parent organization, then the loyalty shifts to that organization. The cadre control should continue to rest with that, and the DGQA has to come under the headquarter IDS or the vice chiefs. The DGQA is a standalone board of of course, Mr. Subhash Chandra here. They have the DDP. So you have the Department of Defense Products. So there is an overall required. And let me now put it very bluntly. The decision time, I think, is finally over. This government will take hard decisions. It will take hard decisions. It is the ordnance factories should be the driver for change, not for resistance. Because it is the change is staring us on our face. We cannot not afford to do it. The only challenge is to bring it out. The transition has to be smooth. It has to be as effective as possible, and it has to support it. If there is resistance, and there will be resistance, which is actually very natural, but we need to ensure that the nation gains, the armed forces gain, the defense of India is not jeopardized, it's not threatened. We are facing massive challenges with the northern borders. So we'll have to live up to that and let the ordnance factories drive the change. They should be integral and part of the change, and someone should not dictating what they should be. They should author the change. They should take ownership of the change. So that's what I'm trying to say. It is not being critical of ordnance factories. The change is not coming about because ordnance factories is not working well. The change is coming about because there's a need to look forward. We have to be forward looking. So that is where the change comes out. Some of it is mistaken as an organizational part. No, we have been supported by them all over, and we work together. It's not that we have not. So that is what I'm trying to say. Let the ordnance factory be the driver for change and not resistance.
Thank you, sir. I think Shri Harimohan has some points. So please go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, thank you again for giving me a chance. Let me just share with the forum that so far as quality and the problems faced by our armed forces are concerned, we have around 1.5 years back, we have developed a internet-based customer complaint monitoring system. That internet-enabled system permits any of our customer to record their complaint. And that complaint is monitored on day-to-day basis by the general manager, almost twice a week by the member ordnance factory board, and every week by the chairman ordnance factory board. So we have set up a perfect connect with our customers for addressing if there is any complaint, if there is any issue. And second thing, the quality, there are forums available. Probably those forums have to be maybe more effective. We have to be more proactive to handle those issues. And the third dimension which General Bhatia is mentioning is the willingness to change. I would like to share with you that I took over as chairman in the month of December. I had a meeting with all my 40 general managers within 1 week of my taking over. And we had 2 days of deliberation that what are the issues our organization is facing, and we have worked out a strategy. Within next 15 to 20 days, again, I had a direct conference with all the workmen of the 41 factories. Now, all these 80,000 people cannot be collected together. So from a bigger factory, 3 workmen, from a smaller factory, 2 workmen, a very small factory, workmen, around 125 workmen, we brought them to Nagpur, and our entire top leadership of Ordnance Factory Board, and with unions and associations, we had 2 days of interaction. And our whole aim was to convince them that there is a need for change. We cannot continue in the system in which we are working. There are opportunities, there is infrastructure, there is technical capability, there is technical skill, everything is available. But still, we do not have full satisfaction from our customer. So where is the gap? So all that has to be understood, identified, and we should change. And I am telling you, at the end of 2 days, the top leadership of Ordnance Factory Board, we were able to convince those 125 people, the lowest functionary, the workmen, that there is a need for change. So I do not see any resistance on the part of employees. They are willing to change. Their only concern is, please, whatever change you want to bring in that change, which will secure the future of the organization. Future of employees, government is already guaranteeing. Being a government employee, their future is guaranteed. Their service conditions are guaranteed. But what their concern is, let the future of organization also should be guaranteed. Means we should be, nobody can guarantee, but we should have a definite roadmap. And very rightly brought out by General Bhatia, we should have a proper transition plan. We should know that 1 year how much we will achieve, 2 years how much we will achieve, 3 years where we will be, 4th year where we will be, and if in case we do not achieve, what will be the correct reaction? So it has to be a monitored, government-supported, government-monitored transition, and that transition which ensures the growth of this organization, survival of this very important national asset, that would be, in my opinion, in my assessment, would always be a welcome by every member of Ordnance Factory fraternity, including the 4,000 industries which are associated with Ordnance Factory.
Thank you, Shri Hariman. We have one more question. I, as a common citizen, is worried that when the Indochina conflict is on, the unions have taken a call to go on strike on 12th of October. How do you justify this? Shri Hariman, can you take on this question?
This question was also raised and discussed in the India Today channel as well as in the TEJ channel. And today I see there is an immediate response by the unions. Federations have given a press statement. They have been saying from day one, and they are again saying that in case anything is required by the armed forces to fight with the enemy on any border, they will be willing to work for 24 hours. The product, the weapon, the ammunition, whichever is required by Indian Army in that kind of a situation, they are giving a commitment to work for 24 hours. So they are fully committed for this cause. Strike has got no relation with the problems at the borders. Strike is for a cause, and that cause they want to be addressed. This is my assessment. Ordnance Factory Board is not going on strike. The workmen and workers, they have given a strike call, and they have given their apprehensions. They have given everything in black and white. And I am sure the EGOM and the government would address their apprehensions. And I am sure that the current government definitely will find a solution which will be in the interest of the country, in the interest of Ordnance.
Thank you, sir. I think with that, we will close it. And rest of the is more of comments and questions which have been answered. So I'm not going into that. So finally, on behalf of Colonel Tyagi, Chief Editor, Chanakya Forum, and the entire team, I would like to thank each one of the panelists. It has really been a fascinating debate, and I think unlike a TV channel, this was more decent, dignified, and also we could thoroughly debate without that kind of stuff was, and basically 4 fantastic speakers. Once again, we look forward to being in touch with each one of you. I also like to thank all the participants who have joined for making this webinar more lively with the questions. Once again, thank you very much. We look forward to interacting with you in future. The next webinar will be coming up on this Saturday. We will be coming up with a new topic. Thank you once again. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you.